All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jimmie Prow in the CAD office. This morning we'll be finishing up our CAD Manager series. We'll be discussing printing. And for today we'll talk not so much about how to print, but how to configure the printing. So we'll look at the printing configuration variables. We'll talk a little bit about print drivers, pin tables, print styles. We'll look at print organizer a little bit, and mainly how it relates to Sheet Navigator and how you can configure some stuff in there as well. So let's just go ahead and get started. So for the FDOT printing variables, basically we define I guess a small list of the available printing variables. I've got a screenshot here from the site fdot.txt file that basically lists out all of the printing variables that we set. Basically we set variables to define the location of where to find pin tables and where to find the PLT CFG files. You can see here the MS plot files basically sets a default output directory to the ENG data directory. Just some basic stuff like that. But there's a huge list of variables available for printing in MicroStation, and probably the best place to find those is just in the help files. So if we go to MicroStation and we'll go to help and contents, and what I found the best way to find it is just to search for one of the variables itself. So if you list out the topics for that and then check the different options here, usually you can run across one of the lists. In this case it's the list of the printing configuration variables. So you can see what I mean. There's a large list of variables available, and you can go through these and see if there's anything that you would like to set that maybe we don't. A lot of it's I don't know, just things that I haven't really found a need for. Things like setting the color of the fence in the preview and things like that. You can define variables for that. You can invert the white colors to black and so forth, just different things in the previews. When we do set is the MS plot engine command line arguments. Basically this allows you to pass command line arguments that get executed when the printing is kicked off in the background. For example, like when you run print organizer and you execute a print, it doesn't use the current version of MicroStation or the currently open session of MicroStation to print. It actually spawns off another session of MicroStation in the background and prints through there. So if you want to have the same variables, same environment available in your printing session, then you've got to pass it certain variables to define that. And if we go back to the PowerPoint, you'll see what I mean. Like in that variable here, MS PLT engine command line arguments, we're actually loading the FDOT workspace just like you would normally do from the icon through there. So it's got the level libraries and stuff like that available to it. But you can just refer to that list and see if there's anything that you find interesting or you might be able to use there at your location, and then add to that using the custom vars.txt like we seen 2 weeks ago. And this is an example of that. So if you've got your own, say, library of print drivers and your own library of pin tables, this is probably the most common configuration that you'd want to do. You would want to go in and basically set the path to your pin tables and the path to your PLT CFG files, and have those available. Another thing you might consider is adding your print styles, which we'll get to soon, to a basically add them to the MSDGN live list here, and that way you can name it anything you want. By default, it's gonna look for a specific file name, but if you're using the custom vars to set other things, and then you just went ahead and added your print styles to the MSDGN live list variable in your custom vars, basically what that allows you to do then is you can have your DGN lib located in a different location out on your server where all of your resources are at. And that way, as you move from, say, FDOT SS2 to FDOT SS3, then all you have to copy is your custom vars from one server to the location to the next. You don't have to copy the custom vars and the print styles and any other resources you might have out there. That way you can keep everything that you have created isolated in one location, and you've only got to use one file for the I guess for the reconfiguration of the new workspace. Okay, we got a question up. Where can I find the PowerPoint for this webinar series? We'll have the PowerPoints posted out there with the videos. For example, after we finish this one today, we'll process the video and then post the video and the PowerPoint on the posted webinars section of our website. The previous two are already available out there. Okay. One other thing I'd like to point out on this is that you could use the prepinned or uppinned characters to control what the default location is for the say if you're going to go and browse for a pin table or for a print driver. For example, in this screenshot here, I've got MS pin table, and then I'm appending the path to the custom pin tables. So in that case, if I went to pin table and was going to browse for a new one, first it would find the FDOT location, and I'd have to then navigate to the custom location. If I wanted it to default to my custom location, then I would use an append character like we see in the second one, and it would go to that location first. So if we go over to MicroStation, we can just kind of see how that works. So if I go to the print dialog, and if I select, the first one was a pin table, so if I just browse for a pin table here, you'll notice it's going to default to the FDOT directory first, and then I would have to then navigate over to my custom location and find any pin tables. If I use the option to look for the print drivers and choose that, you notice it's defaulting to my custom location, and that's all just because of the way I configured this. I did the first one to show you how it would still default to the FDOT location, and the second one I pre-pinned it so it would default to the custom location. Okay, so what are some of the things that you want to consider when setting up and configuring the printing? Basically, you want to look at using the PostScript drivers if you're going to print directly to printers. And the reason why, I know some people like to use just the Windows System Printer because it's easy and you don't really have to configure anything in the driver. It just finds the Windows printers. But the disadvantage of using those are you have to go in and set the scale every time you select it. If you use a PostScript driver, you define the page size to match the print border, and it will always come up to the appropriate scale, whether you place it at 1, 40, 50, 100. It's always going to come up to that scale because it's set to maximize to that page size. So I would recommend going and creating PostScript drivers for each device that you want to print to. I guess there's a couple of options. You can create one for each device you want to print to, or you could actually create one that just prints to a port, say LPT3, and then you could give the users a way to define which printer is mapped to LPT3. So that's a couple different approaches. It just depends on how complicated you want to get, whether you want to manage several plot drivers or whether you want to have one plot driver and then manage a system of selecting the printers. Okay, and we've got a question, am I talking about the Microsoft or Bentley drivers? In this case I'm talking about the Bentley drivers. The printer configuration files, I guess, is the exact term. And that is a good point, though, Gene, is that the I'm referring to the Bentley PostScript drivers here, but if you're going to use those drivers, you need to have a Windows PostScript driver configured on the system. And we'll get in and look at that just a minute and some recommendations on what to define there. Another thing you want to look at is your pin table library. You'll want to develop a library of various pin tables. Just to I guess fine-tune the output, because different disciplines like to see their sheets in different ways. For example, roadway might want to grayscale out the topos and the existing utilities, existing drainage to make them show up lighter and make the proposed line work look a little heavier. But drainage would want to maybe even grayscale out some of the proposed roadway stuff and focus more on the drainage. Same thing with signing, with signals and so forth. Or maybe they want to turn references off altogether when they print. You've got all those options with a pin table. So, you know, I would recommend maybe just identifying how each of the different disciplines in your office like to see their sheets, and maybe go ahead and developing a pin table to use that. And then you can configure print styles to automatically apply those pin tables to the various drivers or in Print Organizer when you use them there. Okay, and in the presentation here, it's talking about the pin tables and weights and so forth. We'll get to that in just a minute, and I'll try to catch up with Gene's other question there. First, I want to go ahead and finish up on the print drivers. Like I said, the PostScript print drivers are what I would recommend. We give you a couple of different examples here with the FDOT workspace. The drivers delivered with the FDOT workspace are exactly that. They're just examples. There's no way that we can know all the different configurations in everybody's office around the state. So we give you these examples, and you're going to have to go in and tweak those to suit your needs. For example, on a PostScript driver, you're going to have to go in and define the printer, the shared printer location. It is a hardware specific thing, so Some printers might print darker than others, so maybe you want to go in and beef up the line weights if your printer's printing light, or maybe you got a printer that prints real heavy and you want to thin them out a little bit more. You can do that, set the weights and stuff in the print driver. So that's just the kind of little tweaks you get there. The main thing with weights and things like that are that you want it to be a reproducible sheet. There's no real specific requirements on weights or anything other than it needs to be, you need to be able to make a copy of a copy and still see all your line work. You don't want to gray it out so light that things start fading out after it's copied once or twice. You want to be able to, reproduce that sheet multiple times and still be able to see all your line work clearly. That's the main focus of the weights and thicknesses and darknesses applied to the lines. See, also we've got one example of a system driver. Like I said, that works if you don't have a PostScript printer in your office. You could use the FDOT printer, PLT CFG, and then basically the FDOT printer PLT CFG just finds all of the Windows printers that are attached to the computer, that are defined in, say, control panel, printers and devices, or something like that. If it's listed in there, it'll be available to the system printer. So that works for those situations where you don't have a PostScript driver and you still want to be able to print to your different devices. The HPGL, RTL, those are recommended for use with, say you're doing right-of-way mapping and you've got raster images. That's probably what you'd want to use for, the large format prints with raster images. And then, of course, the PDF driver will create the PDF for you. Okay, so let's just go into MicroStation and we'll look at a couple of those different types of drivers. So if I go to the FDOT drivers, and I'm going to have to browse to those. So if I go to D, FDOT SS3, resources, and plot, and I'm just going to pick the HP 5000 driver first. And this is the PostScript driver. And what I want to do is go ahead and open a file that's got a plan sheet in it. So, I don't see one there. Okay, so we'll just go to a plan sheet file. And basically, I'll show you the differences here. So let's just say if I apply a print style and pick the FDOT PDF, you'll notice as soon as I pick that, it applies that print driver, it applies the fence, and I don't have to set a scale there. It would work the same way if I picked if I had a style set up with a PostScript driver like the HP 5000. Since you define the page size in the driver, once you apply a style, it's going to automatically set that to scale. But if I were to select a driver like the system printer, we got a FDOT printer PLT CFG, which is a Windows system printer, and if I try to apply a style with that or anything, it won't come up to scale. And let me just go ahead and do that and show you an example here. So we got a style here that automatically applies to the Windows printer driver. And when I select that, it'll go out and place the fence around the plan border and try to maximize that. But you notice the scale's still a little bit off. So anytime I use that, I'm going to have to come in and say 40 and set that before I print. And that's what I was referring to when I was talking about the drivers for the system drivers don't come in correctly. And it's mainly because a system driver, you don't really define the page size. It uses forms more like the printer. You know, you can have the different output devices. You can have a letter, tabloid, 11 by 17, all the different ways that a printer might list them out. But there's no way to define the exact size of that print area on that form in one of these drivers. Whereas a PostScript driver, you go in and define the page size exactly. And just to look at that, we'll go ahead and work ahead a little bit here. And I'll edit the printer driver configuration file. And in this case, we've got one set here, but it doesn't really get applied. Basically, with a system driver, you tell it which form to use more than the size of the output. Whereas if this was a PostScript driver, and let me just browse and select one of those. HP 5000 again, and then we go to the page sizes here. You can basically define the exact sizes of those drivers. In this case, it's 11 by 17, but we're adding a margin of 1/4 of an inch. Basically, what we're trying to reach is this red border on the sheet is 10.5 by 16.5. So we want our ending size to be 10.5 by 16.5. I'm sorry, 10.6 by 16.5. So that's where we get this. We're taking 2/10 off of the 11 and 1/4 inch off of each side of the 17, and that gives us that total, which matches the border exactly, which means when we maximize that, it comes out exactly to a 40 scale or a 50 scale. Okay, so we'll just jump back to the PowerPoint, see how far ahead we got. This is referring to editing the different drivers, so that's kind of what we was doing there. This is also showing some of the key areas to look at. For example, in a PostScript driver, you're going to have to define the print device name to associate it with a specific printer. Or you could use, like we said before, LPT3 and then have a way to map printers to LPT3. And I can show you an example of that in just a minute. In the PDF drivers, I just wanted to point out here, you don't really map it to a specific printer because it's going to print an output. But there are a lot of settings available that we don't set by default. For example, you can define the format of the PDF that gets generated. Do you want the level names to show up in the print so you can turn levels on and off? You can enable measuring. You can enable georeferencing. To do all of that, you'd have to turn on the print optional content. Once you do that, it'll enable all these optional features or properties that you can define, and basically it'll let you really extend the information that gets embedded in the PDF. Okay, So let's go back and finish up talking about print drivers. Like I was saying here, you got to define the printer name and the share. So let's talk a little bit about that. In a PostScript driver, and I'm just to quickly get a PostScript driver, I'm going to apply print style, and let's just pick this design one for now, and then I will edit that print driver. And you can find out what type of print driver it is by clicking on the General tab, and it'll tell you that it's a Bentley driver. In this case, it's a PostScript driver. And then on the Base Properties tab, you can set things like whether you want it to default to grayscale or true color. If you wanted to define a print style name to associate with this, then you could do that here. You could define a pin table name here. And what you got to consider, and this goes back to kind of figuring out how your users want to work. What you got to consider is how all of this is going to work together. So if I'm going to use mainly print styles to apply this information here and in Print Organizer, then I wouldn't want to necessarily define a print style here. I'm going to be selecting the print style from the settings or when I add the sheets in Print Organizer. And once you start getting information defined in multiple locations, then you can have conflicts and one thing tries to override another. So I tend not to define a pin table name or a print style name in my print driver, and I always apply those with the print style. So that's why you'll see these blank on the FDOT drivers. The other driver properties, usually you don't really need to worry about the driver properties on a PostScript driver. Where you want to look at is under the default print file name, and this is where you can define it to a specific printer or to a port. So in this first example, we've got a printer defined, and where did I get this name? If I go to my Start, Devices and Printers, and then we look at the various printers here that are associated, I've got, this is looking at the HP 9000, it's going to be this one right here. So if I just go here and look at the properties, basically this path is a combination of the server it's on, which in this case is my computer, and then this shared printer name right here. So when the IT folks are setting up the drivers on the server, or you're doing that, or whoever does it, you'll be given the option to share that out. And when you share that out, I would recommend just to keep it simple, a lot of times it'll give you some big long name with spaces and everything else. I tend to just rewrite those to something short, simple to use, and I take any spaces out. That way I just don't have to worry about that when I'm printing to it from MicroStation. So on the Windows driver side, you'll want to share that printer out and give it a nice simple name that makes it easy to identify where that printer's at. Okay, and then like I said here, that's just the server name and then the printer share name there. So basically that's what you would need to define in your PostScript drivers if you want to create a PostScript driver for every device. The other option, like I said, by default when you get one of the FDOT drivers, it's just going to be set to say LPT3, and that's again because I don't know everybody's shared printer names. We can't pre-configure thousands of print drivers, so we just set it to a default value, and then you'll need to go in and set that. Now you can also use LPT3 if you have a way to map your printers on the fly. And what this would allow you to do is have basically one PostScript driver for your whole office, whether you've got one printer or 10, it won't really matter. I could save this and then have something like this toolbar over here where I can map my printer to Design 1 or Design 2 or to a HP 1055. Just by clicking those buttons, I've remapped LPT3 to these different devices using netuse commands. So basically what it's doing in the background, I'm just going to open up a command window here so you can see what's going on. And if I type in netuse, you'll see that currently LPT3 is mapped to this 1055 CM. If I click on Design 1 and then go back there and type netuse again, now you'll see that this was remapped to a Konica PostScript driver. If I click on the HP Design 2 and then do netuse again, now it's mapped to the HP 9000 QT. So in this example here, I could have just the one print driver mapped to LPT3 and a toolbar docked here, and the users could just pick any device to output to. So that's just a couple of different approaches. I'm sure there's several other ways you could do it as well. I just wanted to kind of give you a couple of examples of how that could work there. Okay, so let's catch up on the questions. So Mike was referring to the FDOT printer PLT CFG and asking why, or explaining that he can't set the fence. We looked at that. You've got to use a PostScript driver to do that. Is there a hierarchy of where styles are defined and which takes precedence? Yeah, and we'll get into print styles here in just a few more minutes. First, though, I believe we're going to cover pin tables, so I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint, and we'll talk a little bit about pin tables. So, like I said, you'll want to review how you want the output to look in your different disciplines, your different types of sheets that you're creating, and then create a library of pin tables. We provide a few with the FDOT workspace. You've got the just the FDOT TBL which works for the majority of plans. We've got an FDOT that does grayscaling. Basically what it does is it grayscales out your topo, your existing utilities, and your existing drainage file. So that would be an example of one that you could use, say, in roadway design. But you could expand on that and create 2 or 3 more to do different things. Maybe you want to gray out more things or turn some stuff off automatically in roadway as well. So it's just all up to your preferences and the way you want the output to look. So with a pin table, that allows you to do it at print time. You don't have to go in and start managing, turning levels on and off before you print and doing all that kind of stuff. You can map a pin table to just do all that for you automatically at print time. Like I said, you can turn elements off. You can change the colors, weights, styles. You can change the priority of elements. So let's say you've got some shaded areas, some shapes identifying widening or something like that. You can shade those to a 70% grayscale and set the priority so they always come up beneath all your other line work. So any text or any hatch marks or anything above them come up out on top. So that's the kind of stuff you can do with a pin table. And pin tables are real easy. Basically, it's like creating a selection set in MicroStation. You got to first create a container to hold your selection criteria. So you insert a section in the print driver or in the pin table. And then second, you go in and you define that selection criteria. So you want to search for something on a particular level or in a particular reference file or a particular element type. Maybe you want to make all your text heavier or lighter. You can search for just text elements. So there's all kinds of different criteria that you can search for, and then you just define those output actions, and you want to say do not plot those elements, or you want to turn the fill off or on those shapes. You want to set the priority to -100 so they always come up behind everything. So you've got lots of different criteria that you can apply to those elements after you've selected them. And we can just take a quick look at that, and I'll show you just some examples out of the FDOT pin tables. So let's go back to MicroStation. We'll bring up the print dialog, and you'll notice I like to use the print styles to get the stuff. It saves me some browsing there. So I'm going to pick the one FDOT PDF gray existing, because it's going to go ahead and attach that gray existing pin table for me. And if we edit that pin table, this will give you a good example of how that works. So we've got a section that we've added here for gray existing. We've got the selection criteria. It looks like nothing's selected, but if you click on the Files tab, it's searching based on the logical names of certain files. So if the logical name starts with topo, then it's going to select everything in that file. Or if it starts with DREX or UTEX, it'll select all the elements in those files, and it'll then apply this output action, which is basically sets the fill color to 20. And in the print driver, the color 20 is set to an RGB value of 150, 150, 150, so it comes out lighter than all of the other line work. So that's kind of how the gray existing works there. I could have also either set an RGB value for it here. I could have set transparencies or whatever else. This just, the possibilities are endless. It just comes up with, what you want to see on your sheets. Okay, so I just want to go ahead and get into print styles next. And if we look at the next slide, we'll start talking about print styles. And basically what print styles allow you to do is make a collection of all these different properties that you can define. You can attach various pin tables. You can define paper sizes. You can choose which print drivers to attach. Identify where that fence will be placed when you're printing, and that's how it automatically fences the sheet for me and scales it and everything as soon as I apply a print style in the print dialog. So all of that stuff can be accomplished just by predefining those properties and then saving them in a style which can then be applied over and over and over again. And these, like I said, these styles can be applied in the print organizer or in the print dialog, as you've seen me use there several times. So where are those print styles stored? Print styles are stored in basically whatever file you have open when you create the print style. So if you're in your plan sheet file when you start creating a print style, it's going to be embedded in that plan sheet file, which means it's not going to be available in any other file. Anytime you wanted to print using that style, you'd have to open up that plan sheet and then apply that style from there. So what we recommend is you store your print styles in a DGN library. And by default, the FDOT print styles are stored in the FDOT SS3 resources DGN Libs directory. and it's stored in a file named FDOT printstyles.dgnlib. We also make provisions to where if you wanted to create your own print styles, you could create a file in that same directory and name it custom_printstyles.dgnlib. And if it's got that name and it's in that directory, it's automatically going to get loaded anytime the FDOT workspace opens. So that's an easy way for you to just add print styles without knowing much about the configuration or how to do that. You can also define print styles down at the user level or the project specific level. There's a user printstyles.dgnlib you can put in this directory. Basically the key there is, in all these cases, is the file you store it in needs to be in this msdgnlib list variable for it to be available to the users. So technically, like I said here at the beginning, you can store your print styles in any location as long as you define them in your custom vars.txt and add them to that msdgnlib list variable. Okay, so that's the basics of print styles and where they get stored. You've seen earlier how I was using the single sheet printing, and I used the print styles to quickly apply both the print driver, the pen table, and to place the fence for me. And that works real well, you know, for single sheet printing when you've got just one sheet per file. Where it gets a little bit tricky is, say, if you've got multiple sheets per file, if you've got 4 or 5 sheets per file, it's only going to fence the first sheet by default. But you could then go in and place the fence around the next sheet and print it, and then the fence around the third sheet and print it. It's just going to select the first sheet by default once you apply that print style. Just a couple things to point out. There are some new features added to the print dialog in SS3. It was updated to where now you can browse for your pen tables here. Used to you'd have to come up under, and this was called pen table here. Now it's been renamed to resymbolization. Used to you'd have to go up there and say attach pen table, but now you can, you know, get to it right from here. It's a lot easier. It also supports design scripts for any of you that are familiar with Interplot and prefer those instead of pen tables. So you could use either the design script or pen table to change the output. And like you saw there, anytime you're using the print styles in the print dialog, you don't need to place a fence, you don't need to select a print driver or pen table, no need to set any display settings like turning construction off or any properties like that. It can do all of that for you. And then once that style's been applied, you can then override those settings if needed. So for example, if you had a print style that did most of the stuff you wanted to do, but you just wanted to maybe switch over and use a different pen table or something, then you could apply that style and then just pick a different pen table before you click the print button. Okay, so and we'll go ahead and look at a print style real quick just to cover that as well. So I'm going to go into, and again, if I create it here, it's only going to be available in this when I have this file open. So I want to go to a DGen library, and I'll go to this one we've created for our custom workspace. Again, I'm using the same custom workspace we've used in the past 2 webinars. In this case, I've got a DGen library created just to store print styles in. And there's a couple ways you can get to the print styles dialog. You can go to print organizer, and it just wants me to select the print driver by default the first time. You can go to print organizer and then go to tools, define print styles, You can also now go to settings, and print styles are listed here, and it'll take you directly to the dialog here. So basically, print styles are just a way to define a collection of properties that can be applied. So if we create a new one real quick, we can say this is a new style. We can give it a name, and we can say this is a PDF with grayscale. So you can name them whatever you want. Just try to name them so it's logical for the users to find and identify. Basically, on the main tab, you can define as much or as little information as you want to apply when you apply the style. Minimum, you probably want to define the fence as to identify the plot's location. You want to maybe define the paper size. In this case, it's not finding a paper size because I didn't have a print driver attached with the right paper size before I went in there. So let me go ahead and pick a different driver. It's not there. Let's go to this one. I believe it's got some paper sizes here. And now if we go to print organizer, tools, define print style. So now you see I've got the print styles or the page sizes available with the driver I had associated. The first time I opened up, you notice how it prompted me for a print driver. That's because nothing had been associated before, so it didn't have the information to populate that. So let's go ahead and create a new print style again. PDF, oops, PDF, grayscale. So this one we're going to create a PDF file that's got grayscale applied. Print area again is fence. I can pick my page size as 11 by 17. I tend to turn rasterized off by default. If for some reason I had to use rasterized, I want the user to go in and override that because the rasterized will make the prints larger and slower. So I turn that off by default. You'll notice these checkboxes have 3 states. They've got unchecked, which means it's going to force it off. It's got checked, which means it's going to force it on. And it's got shaded, which means it's going to do whatever is set in the design file. So if you got your settings saved to have certain things off or on in your display settings, then it will use those settings. So basically I'm going to force rasterize it off, and the rest of this stuff I don't really care that much about. I just want to go ahead and choose the correct pin table, and since I'm going to use this to gray existing, I'll pick that pin table. Under advanced, workspaces basically allow you to define the workspace that gets applied when it's printed. If you don't select anything, it'll use whatever your current workspace is, so I'm going to leave that blank. I'll set my color mode to default to a grayscale. Print raster images, I'll just leave that shaded. If they're there and they're on, it'll use them. If not, it won't. So that's really all I'm gonna set here. Then I'll go to fence, and this is how it defines the location of the fence and how it can automatically fence things for you when you apply a print style. Basically, I'll go in and tell it to create a fence when the style is applied from a shape that it finds in the file that is on the level plot border under bar DP. And if I'm going to use this style in Print Organizer, then I need to consider, do I reference my borders? If I don't ever reference my borders, then I don't even have to search reference files for a print border. So, you know, the creation of print definitions will be faster. If I do use reference borders, then I'll want to check this on. And to speed it up so it doesn't search every reference file, you can define the reference file or name that your border's in. And typically if you're using the FDOT naming convention, it's going to start with BD something. So it would be BD dot star. Or if you're in structures, I believe it starts out with the whole word border. So you might put that in as well. Dot star. Basically just whatever references your border location might be in, you'd want to identify those. And again, that limits the search and helps speed up the print definition creation. And then also you'll want to select create one print definition for each matching shape. Otherwise, it's just going to find the first shape and quit looking. If I select this and I've got multiple print borders in a file, then it'll find those. And that's usually going to be the case. You're going to have that in at least some cases if you got cross sections on there. There's a question here, can I use logicals to find the border as well? Yeah, I believe this will work with either the file name or the logical name of a reference. Okay. So I want to go ahead and say OK there, and that'll set that. Display. Again, this can force the override of some of these display attributes. So if instead of having to go up and turn my construction elements off before I print and having to turn fill on before I print, I can force that kind of stuff with the style. So I can go in and say I don't want my data fields to ever print. I always want my fill to print. I don't want my print border to print or the fence to print. So basically you can go in, I don't want construction to print. If you use level overrides, you can either force those on or tell it to use them only if level overrides are turned on in your file. So that's just different options to apply there. Basically you'd go in and define those settings and then move on. Levels, I don't really use. It's just a way to I guess select different levels. Again, with references, a way you can go in and turn references on and off. I don't really use those, but you could here too, or you could do that in the pin table. It just comes down to what you want to do there. Okay, and then finally on the printer tab, this is where you would define the print driver. So in this case, it's the PDF that we want to select, so I can just click there and then pick the driver I want. In this case, I want to pick the FDOT PDF, so I'll come over here, pick the FDOT PDF, and you'll notice once I do that, it took this away. If you have a system driver, it'll allow you to define which default Windows printer to select and use that as well. Basically, once you get that done, you'll notice that it's blue. It's not really saved. I've done a lot of things. I need to select that and save it before it saves those settings. In this case, this one's blue. I must have changed something there I didn't really want to. So I'm just going to click here and then not save that one. Okay, so that's basically how that works. So now if we go in here and go back to our file that's got a sheet, we can then apply that driver and you'll see how it works. One thing I'm probably going to have to do though is close MicroStation and reopen it. Since that's a brand new driver, I'll probably have to get it to load that level library again. Yeah, see, it's just got the 3 that were in there originally. No, it's there. So just switching files, since I'd already loaded that file, that DGN lib, it recognized it. So I can just select that and say OK, and you'll notice it automatically fences the sheet. It automatically sets the gray existing TBL. Turn my construction off. Basically all the properties, it's exactly to scale. All I have to do now is click the print button, and there, and I'm done. So that's what I mean by configuring the drivers to make it efficient. You would want to basically set that up so the user has as few clicks as possible. They don't have to go in and set all these properties every time they print. Okay, so I guess before we move on, we'll catch up on questions again. We hit the one on logicals. Yes, you should be able to use logical names when identifying references in the print styles. How does the border comment work under the levels tab? Basically, in print drivers, you can add comments to the border. Like, and it's mainly in the pin table. So if we open up a pin table, you can add, or we use pin tables in FDOT to apply this information here, which is why we don't apply the border comment. Now you could also have it just associate a comment with the border that tells it the date and username and stuff like that. But we found that the formatting that you get through the border comments just didn't work as nice. They would kind of get in the way in some places and so forth. So we use, in this case, we use the text substitution in a pin table to apply the information to the border, and not the border comments. And that's again why we turn off the borders and the comments during the printing. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint, and we'll finish up by talking about Sheet Navigator. Sheet Navigator, we've had this functionality in there for a while now. It has the ability to generate a print set for you, so you can quickly, I guess, organize your prints in your print organizer in the same order that you see them in Print Organizer. Basically what you have to do is you have to create a project index or a component index and select that. Once that's selected, you'll have the ability to then generate a print set which will match that index. You can also apply your print styles in Sheet Navigator. So if you wanted to apply, you know, a print style to gray existing to your roadway plan sheets, you could do that. Use a different the FDOT PDF XS for your cross sections to speed up your cross section printing. You can do that. So you can go in and apply print styles to your different sheets in Sheet Navigator, and then when you generate your print set, it associates the properties of that print style to the print definition. And that's it. So we'll just go in and look at that. Okay, I do want to put this in here to remind me. If no print style is defined, a default print style is applied. Basically, so if you don't select anything on your sheets to tell it which print style to use, it's still going to apply a print style. It's just going to apply a default print style. It's going to define one that we've preset in a seed preset located on the server, and we can go in and look at that. We got a question here before we leave the slide. Why are the print styles in red here? It's mainly because they're not in this file. They're not available to be modified. It's just listing out all of the print styles that are available in this workspace I have open when Sheet Navigator was open. Basically anything in Sheet Navigator, if you don't have the ability to modify it in that sheet, then it's going to be red, and that's just another one of those cases there. Okay, so let's just go over and look at that. So if we are in this sheet and we go to Sheet Navigator, and like I said, basically if I look at it first, I need to open up the project index for this project, and Sheet Navigator, of course, tries to organize things in a certain way. And you might have noticed in recent versions of Sheet Navigator, we've added some new columns, and that's for print order. And basically, we had to do that to address sheets with prefixes, because it tries to order these in alphanumeric order. And since you've got the summary box quantity sheets start with an SQ prefix, but they don't come at the end of the plans, we've got to define the print order first, that they come, where they come out in the defined order of plans shown in the plans preparation manual, and then basically it'll go to the number of sheets after that. So that's basically what this print order is telling you. The plans preparation manual says that key sheets come first, CES second, drainage maps, typical sections. It gives you a defined order. So it defines this order based on the file name in the order that those file names should be placed in the plans, and then the sheet number in that group set of plans. So that's basically how it's coming up with the print order. And again, you can apply print styles. If we look over here, there should be a print style column. In this case, no print styles are applied, so it's just going to take the default location. But I could come over here on any one of these and choose a print style, and you'll notice that even the print style I just created is available now. So this is a list of all print styles available in the workspace. Okay, so like I said, by default, if this isn't selected, it's going to set a default style. And what is that style going to be? We can go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to go into Print Organizer, and I'm just going to open up a preset. So I'm going to go File, Open, and if I browse to my server location, which in this case is on D, FDOT, SS3, and then MDL apps, you'll see a file named sheetinfo.pset in that location. And if I open that up, it's read only right now, is why I've got that message. If you open that up, basically it's going to define certain properties that get applied. So by default, fence is going to be selected. The units are going to be selected. It's going to default to 11 by 17. It's going to have rasterized turned off by default. It's going to use the FDOT pin table by default. So if I wanted any of this to be different, I could just edit this print style, and then that would be the new default settings if a style wasn't defined in Sheet Navigator. So if I come over here now and say generate print set and give it a name, this is the one for our webinar, it'll go through, and this is a fairly large print set. It's got, you know, several hundred sheets. So it's going to take just a minute to go through and generate, but basically it's going to recreate a print set in the exact same order, broken out in the components of plans that are defined in this index. So we'll give this just a minute to run, and when it finishes, it'll go ahead and open Print Organizer up for you and attach the print set that it creates. Okay, and like I said, this is a big job, so it's going to take a little bit longer. Looks like I've got all the questions caught up, and thanks for the help, guys, for answering those questions for us. Okay, so that finished there, and you can see this is a significant project. It's got several different disciplines. There's lots of sheets in here, and the really good thing about this is the way it organizes them, because it goes ahead and breaks out all your roadway plans in a folder. So if you wanted to print just the roadway plans, you can just click there and say print. It also gives you identifiable names. You can quickly see which ones are your drainage sheets or your summary of pay items or plan sheets. It basically grabs the descriptions off of the sheets and you know, names the print definition after that. And if we go in and look at those definitions, you notice none of those had style defined. So if we go in and look at the properties, it's going to match whatever we had in that seed. So it's using the FDOT TBL pin table by default. Rasterize is turned off. What else do we have? 11 by 17 is selected. Fence is selected. So basically all of the properties that were defined in that seed P set get applied when a style isn't defined in Sheet Navigator. And that's all there is to it. From here I can go in and set that. Now one thing you will notice is that now I've got an unknown group here. It didn't know what to do with these plans. There was either a issue with the file name or with the location of them. The sheet info XML defines the print order based on certain standards, and if a file doesn't meet those standards, then it's going to be unknown, and you'll then just have to these look like there's some guide sign worksheets, so I'd have to pull them into the discipline and the location where I wanted those to be, and I could just, you know, drag and drop them in there if I wanted them right there. So that's all then I'd have to do to come in and adjust that. Save my settings, and I'm done. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the webinar today. Like I said, we didn't really get into a whole lot into printing, but it mainly covered the different things to consider. If you have any other questions in the future, just drop us an email. We'll see about getting you a response, or if you got any ideas for future webinars, pass those along as well. Like I said, this was the last part of the CAD Manager series, but if there's some other things you'd like to see covered, things you have questions about, pass those along. As far as the webinar schedule going forward, this is the last planned webinar for the next couple months. We're going to take some time off from these and concentrate on developing stuff for FDOT SS3, training manuals, such, and get the webinars rolling again around November. Okay, so thanks everybody for attending, and we'll talk to you later.